And I think I know why. He spent the last with his wife in Ireland, and she's been looking after him and distressing him from Nigeria. So, Sonny, how you doing? Good to see you. And God
Thanks,
bless you.
Pastor. I'm very fine.
Yeah, fine. Okay. And how's the Queen of England? I hope she's fine too.
She has taken her COVID vaccination.
I hope the Duke is okay. I hear he's in hospital. The Queen took her COVID vaccination.
Yes, she has. And she said it was stressless and painless.
Oh, wow. That's a good one. And how's the Duke? I hope he's getting better.
Well, he's fine. The man is a survivor. Okay. You know, he's a cat with 9 lives. All right.
He is. He must make. So we look forward to that. Today we have a very, very special guest, somebody that I consider to be my brother. We've been together for many, many years, and he's an Ibadan boy like myself, having attended, or we allowed him to attend a school called Loyola College. And his principal there happened to end up to being my family pastor, family reverend in All Saints Church. He's a political economist and a professor of entrepreneurship, and the founder and CEO of what we call the Center for Values in Leadership. He's a fellow of the Institute of Management Consultants of Nigeria and founding senior faculty of the Lagos Business School, the Pan-Atlantic University, and chairman, chief executive of Integrated Produce City, as well as executive vice chairman of Smart City Lagos, a joint holding with Dubai Holdings by Smart City Dubai. He serves on the board of the leading global professional firm of Deloitte and was director for the Center of Applied Economics at the Lagos Business School. He has written many books. He has worked in many organizations. He has worked as CEO or COO of Volkswagen Nigeria Limited. He was also special advisor to presidency in the past, and he was a candidate for president of Nigeria in 2007 and 2011. A man of faith and family who is widely traveled, quotes copiously from different authors, very, very well read, very, very, very well informed, and a man that I call Patoto. Please welcome with me, Pastor Patrick Utomi. Is Pastor Pat there, Patrick Utomi? Pat, please unmute yourself if you are there and make a few comments. Otherwise, I may have to force on it to take your session. Hey, look at Charles.
I cannot step into his shoes.
You can't step into his shoes, but can you see him?
No, I can't see him yet, sir.
Okay, maybe he's still trying to connect.
Maybe he's still trying to connect, yeah.
Olu, can you check from the back end? Can you check from the back end?
I will call him now, sir.
Okay. Pat has been a great commentator on the Nigerian state and the things going on in Nigeria for many years. He's been part of what you call the concerned professionals, which my brother Aswe was also a very serious and keen member of. He was also part of NADECO to some extent, in the trenches there, fighting for the liberty of Nigeria. And like I said, he's been presidential candidate twice, 2007 and 2011. In 2015, he stepped down a little and tried to go for the governorship of Delta State, where he comes from. And since then, he's also been advisor to many governments, including the government of President Olusegun Obasanjo. And prior to that, he was a very, very senior advisor in the presidency of Shehu Shagari. That was around the time Pat first came into limelight, and subsequent to that, he then took up a job at Volkswagen of Nigeria, and since then he's been lecturing and running the Center for Values and Leadership that tries to identify leadership talent. So I'm thinking also that Pat might be one of those people who will be able to engage as we go further down the line to ensure that we have the right kind of leadership talent in Nigeria.
Prof is in now, sir.
Let me use this opportunity to also reiterate what we're trying to do with the African Leadership Group, the Nigerian Leadership Series. It is to inform a lot of us on the platform as to what's going on in Nigeria. I was in Calabar. Well, I'm actually in Calabar as we speak. And I was at a lecture where somebody saw what went on behind the scenes in a lot of the legislative houses. It was very, very informative indeed. And a lot of us are not knowledgeable of what we're going through in Nigeria. The second is to see how we can start a movement to see how we can enthrone good governance in Nigeria. This is what we need. Everything rises and falls on leadership. And the third, of course, is to see how we can all get involved, get engaged in this process, and make sure that that we end up on the right side of life in Nigeria. So, Pat, while you were away, I told them the two most famous things about you. Number one, that you're an Ibadan boy, really. You went to Loyola College. And number two, that I call you Patoto. I think that's your claim to fame. So you're most welcome. And also number three, that I'm a member of the gang of Patito's gang. Although I haven't been for a while. So you're welcome, Pat. I have co-anchoring with me a friend and a brother, Sonny Enebi, because I may need to start the program and then I may need him to continue shortly after that. But I'm happy to have you here, Pat. And I know that you and I, we've had many discussions. We've been here and there together. We share many interests. We belong to several groups together. And we're hoping that one way or the other, we will try and get it right in Nigeria. But you're one of the most prolific, one of the most studious and steady, one of the most widely read people in Nigeria, and perhaps one of the people that really carry the burden of Nigeria on your shoulders. And you've been doing this for almost 45 years, if I have my sums right, or maybe before, maybe from your mother's womb, you've been carrying Nigeria, the way I see you. Tell me, what makes you do what you do? Relentless, consistent, always there. And you're perhaps the most connected person in Nigeria. There's almost nobody you don't know, almost on a personal basis. What makes you do what you do?
Well, thank you so much. Let me say that I have why I didn't join exactly is that some people who came with problems I was trying to solve and trying to get on. I got on exactly on time on one device, not realizing that I would lose battery on that while I was struggling to get the laptop. So if I'm let in on the laptop, I'll probably leave this cell phone and walk off the laptop. So I'm waiting to join. Yeah, I've joined there. So let me focus on that. Then I can probably switch this one off. But what wakes me up in the morning every day? And that's a very, very important question, because until we can resolve that question of what wakes us up in the morning, we really can't get to do things quite right. I wake up in the morning asking myself, why am I here? Why was I born into this world? And I think that everybody needs to do that with themselves. You know, very, very early in life, I read the famous book that everybody requires, Purpose-Driven Life. But even before I read that book, I had been given to thinking, why am I here? What is my purpose? What really is important in life? And that started when I was a 7-year-old. I had these American Catholic priests who were really the ones that affected my earliest days. Now, in those very early days, when I was an altar boy, John F. Kennedy was president of the United States of America. And I got an overdose from those American priests on Kennedy, Camelot, and all of those things. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. You know, by the time I was 9, 10, all those were coming out of my nose, my ears, and everywhere. And it has done me a lot of good, I like to think. First of all, it made me focus on the fact that what makes the ultimate difference in life are your values. I got a chance to see people who were, in their view, riding high, running the world, on top of everything. And I saw them come down to nothing after some years. And so the question really, what's important in life, kept nagging me. I long then came to a conclusion that what matters is whether your life has impact, whether it has affected for good the lives of other people. I came to the conclusion very early in life that man was created as a gift, one to the other. If not, God would not have put man in community. He would have dropped us around 150 miles from the other. But because he knew that our strength is truly made stronger, not perfect, making perfect is in him, but it's made stronger by our connectedness. So being connected to other people has been a critical part of my life. You know, there's a boast that I permit myself to make from time to time. And that boast is that there is hardly any state in this country that I stop into that I don't have a bosom friend, a real friend. And this is because from get-go, recognizing that my neighbor was truly a gift to me and me a gift to him has ruled the way I've seen the world. I can get into all kinds of groupings, ethnic, non-ethnic, whatever, but I just am unable to think of people in terms of the parochial. I always think of people in terms of their humanity. So this is what has defined me really, and this is what makes me do what I do.
Thank you very, very much, Pat. I think this has been very revealing and very encouraging to me, especially. Number one, I'm shocked to learn that you're an altar boy.
At age 6, 7, I was even a sacristan at 8. I used to wake up at 4:30 in the morning to go and get ready for morning mass.
Are you serious?
Not
That's
joking.
amazing. And the revelation is you can see what values can do to the life of a young man and shape his destiny. And that's what's missing in Nigeria. So let me go quick to the question. We're speaking today on the future of Nigeria, Pat, tell me from your perspective and the way you see things now, after having been through Nigeria all these years, does Nigeria have a future? Does Nigeria have a future? Do you think Nigeria has a future?
Let me put it this way. Nigeria better have a future, because if it doesn't have a future, the black man is in serious trouble. In fact, the way that I see it, the failure of Nigeria could be 1,000 years of servitude for the black man. The black man has been holding a very bad end of the stick in the human race for progress during these last 500 years. And one of the best opportunities to escape that is the emergence of Nigeria as a country. Unfortunately, we've not played our role well so far. But I'm a believer that things can turn around. If I look at some countries that we are nearly reaching off as basket cases, and just one small thing and they found the right pace of leadership and things began to go north for them. Classic example is Brazil. When I started in my studies with an interest in development economics in grad school, my favorite part of the world to track, this was in the 70s, in the late 70s, was Brazil. I was not Latin America. I read all the development scholars that I could read on Latin America. One of the leading thinkers around that time was an Argentine scholar called Guillermo O'Donnell. And Guillermo O'Donnell wrote about modernization and what he called bureaucratic authoritarianism, and how, you know, emerging military technocratic coalitions in Brazil and elsewhere were going to undemocratically but certainly drive Latin America towards a direction of progress. In fact, my PhD thesis tried to test the O'Donnell thesis in Nigeria, and I found to the contrary that Nigeria did not show those traits. Anyhow, everybody kept getting more and more disappointed in Latin America, because with all the theorizing and everything, Latin America just kept going southwards. In 1979 or 80, I met a famous Brazilian scholar who was then at the Economic Commission for Latin America, was at one of those conferences in New York. And I said to him, I asked him a question. I said, this is your theory, this dependency theory. They were called the dependistas, which basically looked at the underdevelopment of Latin American countries in terms of their dependency on the North or the West. And therefore urged a number of solutions like selective delinking from international capitalism and all those kinds of things that dependency theory was quite well known for. I remember asking very precociously in that question about how dependency theory sounds so brilliant, so elegant, but that it seemed to me like elegant theorizing without any redemptive value. That it didn't show me how the people of Latin America could escape their condition, even though it was beautiful theory. The center of the periphery linking up with the center of the center, and then marginalizing the periphery of the periphery to the ultimate. Oh, fancy, very nice stuff. That man was named Henrique Fernando Cardoso. I was to ask him a question many years later, 30-something years later, in Lagos, Nigeria, when he came to give the Anya Moshigwe lecture. He apparently remembered the precocious guy in New York, you know, when I reminded him the question I asked him. But from the time I asked him that question to the lecture he gave in Lagos, this man had traveled a path that began the transformation of Brazil. Enrique Cardoso returned to Brazil because he was in exile in Chile, where the Economic Commission for Latin America was located. And when he returned home, after the military left power, bearing in mind, by the way, that his father was one of those generals, but he rebelled and left the country. He became foreign. He became foreign minister, and as foreign minister, he was going to give a speech in New York one evening at the General Assembly of the United Nations when he got a call from the president of Brazil, who said to him, "Professor Cardoso, how would you like to be finance minister?" Now, I can assure you that nobody in their right senses at that time would have wanted to be finance minister. The lifespan in office of finance ministers in Brazil was probably no more than 3 months. Inflation was going through the roof. If you entered and I used to go to, by the way, in my early days as an executive at Volkswagen, I used to go to Brazil because our CKD kids used to come from the Volkswagen plant in San Bernardo Campo, just outside Sao Paulo. And I can tell you, you could get drunk by just walking on the streets of Sao Paulo because they were trying to use gasohol to power cars. And the air was full of alcohol smell. If you entered a shop, the price of the thing could change 3 times between when you entered the shop and when you got to the checkout counter. Brazil was going through hyperinflation. Everything was wrong. So finance ministers were being sacked every couple of weeks. And so when Cardoso was asked by the president if he would like to be finance minister, I think he said to the president, "Mr. President, I'm about to make a very important speech. Why don't we talk tomorrow morning after this?" The president said, "Okay, thank you." When he finished the speech, got to his hotel room, he got a call. It was from his wife. And his wife called him 3 times. And you know, if your wife calls you 3 times, you're in serious trouble. And the wife says to him, "Why in the world would you accept to be finance minister?" He said, "I have not accepted any such thing." He said, "You have not?" "No. The president called me just before I went in. I told him, can we talk tomorrow?" He said to him, "Well, it has been announced you are the new finance minister." So Cardoso decided on the long flight back to Brasilia that it was the patriot's duty to step in no matter how bad. But that one thing he was going to do, he was going to forget everything that made Cardoso famous, whatever he stood on. Invite the best and brightest of the young economists Brazil had. And several of them were Milton Friedman students in the University of Chicago. He put them together and said, "All of you fight and quarrel for as long as you want. When you are nearing a solution, invite me in. Whatever it is there is a consensus on, I will take it up and implement and use my credibility with the Brazilian people, even if it's against everything I've stood for." That was precisely what happened. Whereas Cardoso's dependistas argued for selective delinking from international capitalism, the young economists argued for Brazil to engage into globalization. The set of policies that were recommended suddenly brought inflation to a halt, and growth resumed in Brazil. I mean, people were so excited by the work that he did as finance minister, even if it was intellectual suicide for him, that they quickly hurried and drafted him to be president of Brazil. By the time he was done and Inácio Lula da Silva emerged, Brazil was a new country. Today, if you read the great books on how you fix problems, like fixes the fix, you will find Busa Familia as one of those great examples of how you implement a turnaround for a country. I shamelessly admit that it was from that I borrowed some of the ideas that I suggested into the roadmap of the APC that has been translated into these, they call them all kinds of different things. I know, but you know, these conditional cash transfer things. I think they call some, I don't remember what their names anyway, it doesn't matter what we call them here. But those were some of the places where those ideas were hashed and brought Brazil from the brink of disaster to what, the 6th, 7th largest economy in the world. So it is possible to save a country. And I think that the black man desperately needs Nigeria to be saved so that it will be spared 1,000 years of servitude.
Thank you very much, Pat. Now I'm going to ask you a very pointed question, and I want you to answer me very specifically and one point after the other. What do we need to do? What do we need to do to make sure that Nigeria turns around? What are you going to do? What do we have to do? What do the people on this platform need to do to make sure Nigeria has a future and that come 2023 and not beyond, we get the right kind of leaders in Nigeria? What do we need to do?
Well, first of all, we've got to accept that most of the conversation we have are around the symptoms, not the root causes. The root causes of the problem of Nigeria are simply a crisis of values. I am not afraid to say that Nigeria is a criminal enterprise as currently organized. The values have gone so south. There is state capture, a takeover of a Nigerian state by people driven largely by their personal interests, and they are willing to use all kinds of criminal means to obtain from the Nigerian state for their own material use those things that could have been used to make Nigeria a better place to run. I have no hesitation in saying that, I can prove it any day. The absence of integrity in the system, the absence of committed people, the recognition that leadership is other-centered behavior, not self-centered. When people in leadership think primarily of themselves and secondarily about the state or other people, you can't achieve much. They're not leaders. So Nigeria presently has very few leaders. It has a lot of people in power, people in authority, but they're not leaders. You see, if you go back even in Nigerian history to the 50s and the 60s, and let me embarrass you now, Ituah, by something your mother said to me, you'll be shocked. As I don't know if they all know that your mother was the first woman to be secretary to the government in this country.
Permanent secretary. Permanent secretary.
Permanent secretary. Yeah, but she was, she eventually finished up as, was it not SSG? I don't remember anyway.
She wasn't SSG. She was supposed to be, but she didn't take it up.
Oh, okay.
She was supposed to go to Ondo State and become SSG. She said she was tired of moving up.
Okay.
Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, it was an event. It was at Federal Palace Hotel. And she was telling me, we're talking about the military. And she told the story of General Gowon coming to Ibadan. And in those days, you know, the university lecturers were quarreling amongst each other. Who got that chair? Who got this chair? I shouldn't have gotten. And they started writing petitions to the Dam Barracks about how they didn't get the chair that they were supposed to get. He said, when General Gowon came to Ibadan, he said to General Adebayo at the cocktail, Bob, tell me, what's this? Are there too few carpenters in Ibadan? That the professors in Ibadan are quarreling over the chair. Can't you make more chairs? Now, it kind of sounds funny now, but in so many ways, it was a sense of the beginning of the erosion of our values in Nigeria. Look, Dr. Michael Okpara was Premier of Eastern Region. He was responsible for the apportioning of Independence layout and much of GRA Enugu. Dr. Okpara did not give himself one single plot. In fact, when he returned to Nigeria after the war, Dr. Okpara actually did not own a house anywhere. People had to put money together to build him somewhere he lived in Umuahia, his hometown. You go to the north. Ahmadu Bello applied for a mortgage to buy a house in Kaduna when he was Premier of Northern Region. The mortgage was refused. His salary was not enough to justify it. Can you imagine a banker in Lagos refusing a mortgage applied for by Jide Sanwo-Olu? It is not even imagine, even if he wanted to buy half of Victoria Island. You know, in the same north, Hassan Katsina, who succeeded Ahmadu Bello as military governor, applied for a house or some allocation or whatever, and the chairman of the Civil Service Commission or whatever, Abubakar Imam or so, went to him and told him he should be ashamed of himself to be applying for something where he is the ultimate authority to sign off. And he apologized to the chairman. You can just take this further and compare to today, and you will know that leadership, which is about self-giving, is about ethical approach to doing things. Now, I'll give you another example, and I hope this is Chatham House rules. I was once chatting with the late MD Yusuf. MD Yusuf was Inspector General of Police. Before that, he was head of this secret police, the NSO as it was called back then, what today we call the DSS. He said that after Murtala took over, Murtala Mohammed did not particularly like Chief Obafemi Awolowo and wanted him trapped because the members of the ruling council under Gowon had agreed not to buy any shares in the indigenization programs, the NEPD, Nigerian Enterprises Promotions Decree of 73-75. And so Murtala was convinced that Chief Obafemi Awolowo may have bought some. So he wanted to embarrass Chief Awolowo. So MD said that as he was doing the investigation, he didn't see Chief Awolowo anywhere buying anything. But whose hand he saw everywhere was some of Murtala's own deputies who were military officers in government. So it will tell you about the character the quality of men who provided leadership to Nigeria in the 50s and 60s. Even their politics turned out to be, unfortunately, so rough that it became the excuse for military intervention. So this crisis of recognizing that leadership is self-sacrifice for the good of others, this crisis that comes from abandoning planning for the common good, that led to things like free education, started in the West, and the East tried to compete, and it essentially overtook, by the way, Eastern Nigeria budget of 1957, 40% to education, and it still wasn't enough, and they had to find ways, and they created a phenomenon known in Eastern Nigeria as Ituah Danda. When the communities shipped in, the missionaries came with their bit, government came with its own to accelerate the pace of education. You could take the same philosophy and go through industrialization, how Ikeja industrial estate sparked off Aba and Transamadi in Port Harcourt and Kakuri in Kaduna, that led to the development that brought many of us into the new age. Today, some national governments don't even think in terms of those. They have no strategy. Development was bottom up in those days. The real development was made by the people who ran the subnationals. Today, people borrow, steal, cheat to be governor, just to send people to FAC account meetings and practically do nothing. So these are the fundamental problems that we need to deal with. Once you have people who are smart enough to lead and honest enough, have a sense of service towards others, we will get progress. Stephen Covey says that there are two critical dimensions for leadership, and that they must both be present. One is knowledge, the other is a sense of service. If people have knowledge and they have a sense of service towards others and will sacrificially go to achieve that, there's no way we will not make progress. But right now, the arena of power and authority is usually full of people with little knowledge, if at all, and even when they have knowledge, they have pretty little sense of service towards others. They don't know that leadership is sacrificial giving of self for the advance of the common good of all. And so you have this narcissism, this self-love that rules and has gotten in the way of progress.
Tony, I'm going to ask you to take over and ask Pat a few questions, and then we'll take questions and answers from the public. So, Tony, please go ahead.
All right. Thank you very much, Pastor. All right, Prof, thank you very much for that very, very deep analytical talk that you gave to us. And I think you ended up with that we must have leaders that have knowledge and a sense of service. And let me add maybe one more to it, say character. The question really is, Prof, how do we recruit these people into government, given the kind of political space that we have today? How can we get people that have a sense of service, that have the knowledge to lead, and have the character to lead? How do we get them to participate and to be able to take over? Not just, I mean, you went in, twice you tried to be president, and once you tried to be governor, okay, but it didn't work. So perhaps drawing from your own experience, what do we need to do to get those kind of people in and help them to win?
I think, first of all, that unless we reform the electoral process, everything will be a waste of time. We don't have elections in Nigeria. I think I can prove that every election since 1999 has been a massive fraud. So how do you change the electoral process? You know, in many ways, Nigeria lost a lot with the death of Umaru Yar'Adua. Umaru Musa Yar'Adua may not have been very well and all kinds, but there was something, you're talking about character, was something in him that could have made him the person who did those things that the traditional elite did not do. I recall some very important politicians telling us how Yar'Adua had essentially accepted the recommendations of one of those committees for electoral reform, and it was going to be passed into law and everything, until the big boys of the PDP, led by Chief Neni, went to see him and said, look, Oga, if this thing passes, we will never win. Do you know how you became president? This will probably prevent you from becoming president. So the starting point is reform of the electoral process. And Nigerians,
Okay.
if they really want to be led, should put everything they have into that. Massive civil protests saying, look, we're not asking for anything. We just want to make sure that our votes count. We want to reform electoral process. When the pressure is high, politicians will not know what to do because they know it's the truth. You know, have to do anything extraordinary. Just make sure our votes count, which is what they pretend that they do. So that is so fundamental. I can tell you that one of the things that my history hurts me on, when General Obasanjo was working on a third term, I thought that the only real way to stop him was massive street protests of the nature of the Orange Revolution in Ukraine. And I was working on it. I had made contacts with some of the American companies that helped with that. As another long story, you can read it in my book, Why Not?, of how that was torpedoed. But I had gone into some serious work preparing for that mass protest, you know, to say, because for me, it was particularly hurting in the sense that I was one of General Obasanjo's policy advisors, if you will. And he kept saying, look, this was in 1998. I want a 4-year program, not 1 day more. In 1998, Obasanjo wanted to be a Mandela. He wanted 1 term. Then after the 1 term, his ego ran away with him. Funny characters who wanted to be around power started telling him about Lee Kuan Yew. The only way you free a country is to be around for 30 years. And so he went to 2nd term. And the game that led to 2nd term is for several books. Then suddenly, the 3rd term idea came. So it's still a fundamental problem. And probably that Orange Revolution kind of mass protests may be what we will need to ensure that we have electoral process reform. If you reform the electoral process, Nigerians are not stupid. They know that these guys are not there for them. They just feel powerless. If the process is reformed, Nigerians will elect people who will lead them. The second thing, constitutional reforms. Look, if we didn't come up with this presidential system in 1999, and therefore the only people who could really do anything were those who had amassed so much money under the military that they could set up offices in 36 states and Abuja, and therefore narrowed the political party thing into one or two of the camps of state captors, we wouldn't be where we are. If we had to go to our own small constituency where everybody knows you, where your father's father behaved badly, they would not vote for you, and stuff like that. They know who is who. And a person committed from that community emerges as their MP, and the peers select the best amongst them to be prime minister. You would not have the kind of perfidious political process that we have today. So it is important that we have this electoral process reform, that we have constitutional reforms, a constitution that people own that defines our modus vivendi. But of course, they're going to have those in charge, play games around it. They'll set up their committees, but they're invested in ensuring that the status quo ante subsists to make for their own self-interest. So it's going to be hard to get what's going on in National Assembly yield us the kind of reforms that we need. So people must put pressure. Under pressure, they often buckle, like Obasanjo's third term. Even those who had collected money brought their money back and put it on the table. I say, I didn't take because they were afraid to go back to their constituencies. And so we must be able to do this for the people.
Thank you very much, Prof. So one of the things you said, essentially electoral reforms. So, but here's the deal, Prof. In this atmosphere of money politics, where the richest take the game, how can we ensure, or how do we need to mobilize the people? I mean, you talked about the Orange Revolution. Maybe you may want to talk about that a bit more. And then in the electoral reform, what exactly in the electoral law should we be looking at reforming? What is wrong with the current system? What will you suggest that the reform will look like?
Well, first and foremost, you've got to prevent political parties from being a source for eliminating candidates. Actually, the political party system in Nigeria acts in the exact opposite of how political parties are supposed to act. Are supposed to recruit the best of the best, train them in the values of their party and all of that, have a process that selects some of the best to then run for office. As currently designed, the primary role of Nigeria's major political parties is to prevent good people from entering the process. I can swear on that, and I've seen it work. That's their major process, to prevent good people. They go to the lowest common denominator. In fact, the thing that they look at first, does he have enough money to finance the party in that area? And that attribute of enough money to finance the party means the guy is a thief. So they deliberately look for the thieves in the society to be candidates. Now, from that point, everything is already gone wrong. If the only people who can contest are the thieves in the society, you can just then add up the rest of it. So you've got to take away from these political parties that veto. So whether it's independent candidacy that we allow, and so on and so forth. Secondly, we've got to limit the role of money in elections. The Nigerian-born representative in Newcastle on Tyne was visiting Nigeria several years ago, and I was invited to dinner with her and another British MP at the British High Commissioner's residence. And I remember asking her, how much the elections cost her. She said, she was very precise, 8,700 and something pounds. And that was the cost of stamps and leaking the stamps. Our friends gathered and were leaking the stamp and sticking on things to be posted to the constituency. And I thought to myself, I said to her, you couldn't have made local government in Nigeria. You know? So you've got to really deal with the place of money and not play the kind of games we play today. Have a process that superintends it. And you can see any evidence that somebody spent more than 1 million naira to get elected member of the House. You nullify his election immediately, or her election. So that's an important thing. Having an open, transparent list of those who can vote, not vote. I can tell you, why is there this registration in APC? And some people are crying bloody murder. Others are saying, no, want the people to be closed. It's very simple. Some people bankroll the first registration. It meant that they have in their pockets the entire registration, and they can use it to deal one way or the other. And others say, this is hostage, you're holding us hostage. We want to do it differently. So all of those things need to change in the nature of the electoral process. Okay. We have technology today. We have certainly artificial intelligence, but more importantly, we have technology that makes it easy for everybody to know what is going on at the same time. And those kinds of things. Electronic voting will also help. They find all kinds of excuses and reasons. But there are electronic voting systems that will make more efficient the process and eliminate these games that they play. So those are all critical elements that need to be considered.
Okay, Prof. Thank you very much. You know, the problem of Nigeria is what it is, but you have been one of those that have been pushing for different solutions. All these things you are saying now, given where we are, I think how to get the people behind ideas that will work and make positive change is a challenge for us, because even the party registration, like you said, the money bags in the party are trying to hijack it because they need the numbers. If you bring out any new law now, there's so much money in the hands of people that want to perpetually remain in power, and they will use their money to want to circumvent the process. So the question is, how do we mobilize enough people and sensitize them with ideas to shift away from following money, but following ideas and ideology that can give us the Nigeria of the future that we desire? You know.
Yeah.
Okay.
I hear you very clearly, you know, and technology, which I was talking to the last time, I was talking about blockchain and those kinds of technologies that can, you know, help eliminate these games that they play. See, I was in Cairo when the Arab Spring broke out.
Okay.
I'd gone to do some work for the Afro-Exim Bank. And as a base that the nature of the communication that went out on Facebook, and Twitter, and all of that, the Nigerian youth constitutes a majority of the voting public.
Okay.
Nigeria is such a young country that clearly up to 70% of those who are eligible to vote are less than 40 years old. If they can only educate each other on how much these guys are ruining their future, I just finished a board meeting of one of the big four accounting firms on whose board I sit, Africa board. And you listen to conversations about how talent is leaving the continent of Africa. You train the best accountant here, and the next day he shows up in Canada. And the Canadians are now literally just lynching us with this exodus.
Yeah.
And you say to these people, look, just use your brain to organize and use technology to prevent these people from taking this country over as they have and making lives of others miserable. And with the information that can be flowing to all of these people, you surely can change this process. The problem is that people somehow feel powerless, that there's nothing they can do, which is wrong. There's a lot that you can do. You are the majority. So in terms of numbers, in a democracy, the power belongs to you. In terms of technology, you're in a better position to outplay them. But people just get numb by the process. So the first track is to denumb people and to re-empower them as to what is possible with their talents and this technology. And you'll find that these guys will be on the run.
Okay, all right, Prof. Great. I see a couple of people have questions on the platform. Ibrahim Palmer, I see you. Doye, I see you. Thank you very much, Prof, for this. I will ask you one more question, maybe or two, then I could probably give opportunity to those on the platform that obviously have questions. You have often argued in favor of meritocracy in choosing our leaders in this country, that we should choose on the basis of merit. Recently, the drums have been very loud that the next president of Nigeria in 2023 should and must come from the eastern part of the country. Do you agree that the next president should come from the eastern part of the country, or would you still say we should go based on meritocracy? And if you think it should come, why? Is it time for an Igbo president in Nigeria?
You know, the whole concept of affirmative action significantly owes its intellectual roots to a 1948 book written by a guy called Thomas Kingsley.
Okay.
And that book was titled Representative Bureaucracy. Essentially, what Kingsley argues is that it is good for those that are serviced by a bureaucracy to have representation within that bureaucracy to make for greater effectiveness and inclusion and input from everywhere. But his concept was not a merit negative process. So you get the best. Okay. And if 5 of the very best come of equal ability and there's an area not represented, then it is richer for that bureaucracy for the person who is equally talented, who has come from an area that has not been represented, to be given that chance. This question of Igbo presidency has been one that I have approached sometimes with annoyance, because the most useless people in Eastern Nigeria are now getting ready to run for president because they say it is. So you will end up with idiots making themselves available and the really capable people not being there. So I would say the first point is merit. First point is merit.
Okay.
If these people who have merit are available, these people who are respected across Nigeria, because if you're going to be president of Nigeria, you have to be accepted Nigeria-wide. If these smart, Nigerially accepted people then make themselves available, and among the best of them is somebody who speaks Igbo, it makes sense to go that way. But look at the first thing that they started saying, just to narrow it to themselves. When the struggle, oh, Igbos, 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 it was everybody. Now suddenly it has become Southeast, just so that these useless people can be candidates. That's nonsense. A country should not put itself through something like that. You know? So the smart people
Prof, you qualify, Prof, you qualify as Igbo as well now, so you are
in
included.
many ways. But I'm telling you that to tell you what the problem is, and that's what really began to annoy me.
Yeah.
That these people are not thinking who can govern Nigeria. Okay. They're thinking which character can have opportunity to pillage by being called president. So they miss the whole point.
Okay.
So let's get the best.
Okay.
And if that best, you know, or if amongst those best are people who can represent, can be seen to represent, like in Thomas Kingsley's idea of representative bureaucracy, then it will be fairer to have one of those.
Okay. All right, great. So it will be fair to give the Igbo people a shot at this time at the presidency.
By the way, somebody's complaining about derogatory remarks. I am doing it deliberately. I normally don't talk down at people, but I know that the people who are making this noise are the people who should have been in prison. But yeah, it's our turn, so let's come and run. So don't tell me about derogatory. Nobody has stood up more for Igbo people than myself. So I know what I'm saying, and I know why I'm saying it. I'm being deliberately derogatory.
Okay, all right. Okay, Prof, that's all right. Thank you very much, Olufunke Ogea, that made that remark, talking about the derogatory remark. Anyway, you know, they said in this current democracy that we have now, the Yorubas have had their turn, the Hausas have had their turn, and the Igbos are only saying it's only fair now that we have our turn also before, if at all, we can return to that meritocracy that we are talking about. Let it go round. Then after that, we can dissolve the thing and say, okay, we'll only get the best. But you are saying even in Igbo land can agree within themselves to present the best they have.
That's my point. That's all I'm trying to say. Okay. Because there are fantastic people from every part of the Southeast that are available. But if you allow them to reduce the matter to, you know, a region or something, then it is the worst. What has happened with affirmative action in Nigeria is that nepotism has been used as an excuse to bring in people who are not capable, even from places where they are very capable people. And that's the point I'm trying to fight. That's why I'm using strong language. And I apologize, but I never talk derogatory about anybody, but I have been offended by the way some people have been carrying on this matter.
Okay, all right, Prof. It's okay. I would open the floor up now for some questions, but let me just ask this last question on insecurity in the nation. What's your take? Reading your biography, I see you were born in Kaduna, you went to school in Kano, you grew up partly in the North, so you know a lot about the North. What's your take on the state of insecurity in Nigeria as a whole, but especially in the North, and particularly with the recent kidnappings that have been happening in various schools? Do you think the governments, state governments are handling it well? What should the federal government be doing? What's your take on it?
Well, I think it's very sad that we allowed ourselves to get to this point on something that we could predict, that we saw coming. First of all, talking about how I grew up, as you said, I was born in Kaduna. I was baptized in Jos. I lived in Maiduguri as an infant. I started school in Kanu. I went to school in Guzo before I came to Onitsha to go to Christ the King's College. And most of my secondary education was in Loyola College in Ibadan, and so on and so forth. So I have had a very Nigerian upbringing. I escaped the pogrom in northern Nigeria in 1966. I saw people being killed. In fact, one of the terrible memories that I left with is my father works for British Petroleum, and they sent a light aircraft to take us out of Guzo. And as the aircraft was on the takeoff from, people were literally running, following the plane, because they were afraid that they would attack them shortly at the airport. I experienced insecurity during the war. I was lined up to be executed in Asaba, and somehow survived that. In 1999, thereabouts, a number of books were written about Nigeria. Of course, one was Kalmeya's book, This House Has Fallen, Midnight in Nigeria. It was followed shortly after by Robert Kaplan's book, The Coming Anarchy. In that book, Kaplan talked about how the trends in deep ethnic cleavages in ethnicity, and in religion, economic life, could lead to West Africa descending into anarchy. He in fact pointed to a city in Nigeria called Jos as a point from which the sub-region could descend into anarchy. And I was alarmed. Actually, I was in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia when I saw Kaplan being interviewed on CNN talking about the book. I bought a couple of copies. I sent them to friends who were in the security services. And I encouraged them to look at the trends being predicted, especially in the light of the fact that Kaplan had written a previous book titled Balkan Ghosts, in which he predicted the the Balkans disintegration after Tito, and it happened like he predicted. Unfortunately, we didn't take remedial action, and we are where we are. I think that it says something for how we organize ourselves for leadership. And I think that all hands should really go on deck, because if you look at Sierra Leone, you look at Liberia, that's how they treated this kind of thing, with kid gloves. In fact, I have friends, the Liberian ambassador to Nigeria during the war in Liberia was my schoolmate in the US. Ambassador Joe Keshi, who was representing Nigeria in Sierra Leone around the time of the Civil War there too. Just 2 days ago, he and I were discussing the same thing. I said, it started like a joke. They were drinking and enjoying it just in Freetown. Just some silly things in some other areas. And before you could say Jack, Freetown was war zone. So we must consider this as a matter of serious threat, big existential threat to all of us, wherever we're located in Nigeria.
All right, thank you very much, Prof. Let me take, I see see a lot of people have questions so that they will be able to participate in what we are doing. I will take them in this order. Ibrahim Palm, Ikechi Roche, there's Doye Harim, Charles Odion, Abdul Bello, then Funke. So Ibrahim, let's start with you. Please be brief with your question, unmute yourself or your comments if you may, whichever one you want to take. So Ibrahim Palm, if you are there, you can unmute yourself and ask your question or make your comment.
Thanks very much, Sunny, and thanks, Prof. Let me be very quick because I know there are lots of people waiting. Prof, I would like to be a little bit provocative. You started out by describing how important Nigeria is to the fate of the Black man in the world. My question to you, though, is, are we not overestimating the importance of Nigeria? And why do I ask this? Because I think that kind of mindset that tells us that Nigeria is critical to the success of the Black man in the world, maybe that creates in us some kind of an entitlement mentality. And that could lead to complacency. I mean, if you look at, actually, in a sense, we're beginning to see the relegation of Nigeria as the pivot of Western interest even in West Africa, and how Ghana is increasingly supplanting us as sort of the focus of Western interest in West Africa. But also the economies of Botswana, of Rwanda, they put to shame the fact that Nigeria is not playing its role as the biggest economy. So I think we need to, a bit of humility will help us, I think, as a nation, to rightly understand our place and to recognize that we are not a leader by entitlement. We will be a leader only if we deserve it. I want to, secondly, just raise with you the fact that when you talk about issues around the reform of the electoral process and so on and so forth, I want to challenge certain conceptions. And I think last Thursday we talked about this a little bit. So we referred to the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And I wonder if that isn't some sort of a fiction, because we are neither federal nor truly republic. And we operate a constitution that does not guarantee democracy. We claim to have a three-tier system of government. In reality, the local government tier is absolutely absent. It has been supplanted by the states. We have really two tiers of government. We talk about separation of powers. As far as I know, both at the National Assembly and in the state assemblies, the legislative arm does not really exist as an independent check on the executive. The judiciary, as we all know, has suffered a crisis of integrity, but perhaps now it's beginning to revive. So I think the question is not simply about electoral process reform, it's about a total overhaul of our democratic experience. Our system is not truly democratic. We're not even truly independent, if I take an extreme ideological position. I think we need to deepen our independence, deepen our democratic experiment. I'm not sure that reverting to a parliamentary system would help. It's like playing ping pong with the kind of system that we adopt, but really ground our representation. And I think some of what the young people were doing in October last year gave a glimmer of hope that perhaps we're getting to the point where the people will actually take power and we become a true democracy.
Yeah. Well, thank you so very much. Maybe I'll surprise you by saying that I agree almost with everything you have said. First of all, the idea of an entitlement should be thrown out of. We're not entitled to anything because of the size or the population. It doesn't entitle us to anything. And that is what I hear. In fact, one of the things that obsesses when I hear the giant of Africa, that stuff gets me really reeling. But the truth remains that if we can get our acts together, we can make a lot more impact than a Ghana would be able to do. Now, I give you a true example, and I will respect Chatham House rules as best as on this. You know, this thing that every 5 years, the US government does a global trends survey to look at the way the world is for their strategic interests. And they get think tanks around the world to do different regions. Then they get the CIA to collate, add their own. Then they select global thought leaders to go and look at this thing and give them a synthesis. I had the unique good fortune of being invited to the one for 2005, and it took place in Sweden. I think Good News Igali was ambassador of Nigeria in Sweden then. Since I knew Good News Igali, or God knows Igali, well, I mean, he came to welcome me and all of that. But the conversations that we had at this meeting were pretty interesting. It was the first one following the one in which it was predicted that if Nigeria did not change tack, that within 15 years, it would be a failed or failing state. That was what Nigerians interpreted to mean that Nigeria would break up by 2015, which was not what the report said. And really, truly, if you look at things, the prediction seems to be borne out by developments. Now, this follow-up one to that one, like I said, I was invited. I was the only so-called thought leader from sub-Saharan Africa that was there. Several former European prime ministers, including the incumbent host prime minister, was present at that conversation. And somebody, like I said, Chatham House rules, I can't mention his name, but somebody who was very famous globally because of the role he played during the Balkan War was one of those there. And at a point, he made the, you see, Nigeria, I said 20, 30 years ago, no world power would want to do anything in Africa and not ask what would Nigeria think or do about this, even if they go ahead and do it, but that they would not go ahead without asking how would Nigeria respond. He said today, anybody can walk into Nigeria's backyard and not give a thought what Nigeria will do to it. And it is payoff what? Nigeria has lost its strategic relevance in the world. So, I have no illusions that the entitlement mentality thing is foolhardy, but I do believe that if we can get our act together and realize that we do have a burden, a major role that we can play, and if we got our acts well together, it will do the black man a good deed. Now, about our democracy, I keep often turning to Jürgen Habermas, the contemporary German philosopher, who is the philosopher of the public sphere of modernity and democracy. And Habermas makes this point I keep trying to repeat, that democracy does not really exist without rational public conversation. And what has happened is that our democracy, and somebody else, a Nigerian who does a great job of trying to make this point to us, is Professor Ulufemi Taiwo. I think most Nigerians should read his book, Africa Must Be Modern. What we have managed to do is have a collapse of culture. Culture shapes human progress, and the collapse of culture in Nigeria has been in the way of truly being able to navigate the course that we should for that duty that we owe the black man. Okay, I'll stop there.
All right, thank you very much, Yeah, thank you very much, Prof, for that good response. Ibrahim, I'm sure you are happy with that response. Okay, I think Ikechi Uroche is ready to make his comment or ask his question. Please, let's keep it brief so that others can have the opportunity. Thank you very much, sir. Go ahead.
Yes, Ibrahim, I think I tend to align myself with your points, except that I disagree that we should not go back to parliamentary system, because the system I think we are running now is too bogus. Just like Pat said, a lot of the politicians in that National Assembly are thieves. If you dissolve that National Assembly today, they don't have any job to go to. Their only sustenance, their only means of sustenance is being in the National Assembly. So I think that we should go back and practice parliamentary system when you're talking of our reforms. Without that, I think the presidential system is, we're not ripe for it yet. We're not ripe for a presidential system. Because at the end of the day, you find the president himself disobeying the laws of the land. What are we seeing today? No laws, nothing is respected in this country. One part of the country is treated more superior to the other part of the country. I mean, governors leave office, they go into the Senate, they are collecting salaries, collecting pension from their states. I mean, isn't that a sad situation? You collect pension, you're coming to the Senate to collect salary, or you're going to, you're a minister, you're also collecting salary. I think we should look at the system of government we are running today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ikechi. Prof, you want to respond? Maybe you just take it with the idea of this
I think that
regionalization.
It's important that we see public life as service. I think the cost of governing Nigeria is far too. If I have my way, I'll cut the cost of running Nigeria to about 25% of its current cost. The huge personnel cost to people who contribute very little. You know, Onyeka Onwenu, her father was one of the parliamentarians in the 60s, and he was a school principal in Port Harcourt, continued his job as a principal, and used to ride a bicycle when he was an MP. It just gives you what is different from then and what it is we have today. I mean, when I gave up on our way of running our country was when in 2018, Forbes magazine had just published this piece about Nigeria as the what was particular language they used to describe Nigeria as where not to invest. Now, Africa's money-losing machine. You know, things were so bad in terms of how regulatory risk and all kinds of things are making Nigeria a poor investment destination. Then the Russia-Saudi tussle in OPEC led to oil prices going south. And then I had the National Assembly voting incredible amounts of money, more than education and health and everything, to use to repair their building. I knew then that we were in more than just trouble. They couldn't even relate the realities. All that seemed to matter was themselves. And I was really afraid for Nigeria and sorry for Nigeria. So we've got a problem. How do we persuade these people that their best interest is not necessarily Nigeria's best interest? And that even if they make out from this moment, that in the long term, they are bigger losers anyway. That's what the real challenge has been for me. It's a challenge of education. How do we use information to educate one another? And that's that Habermas thing about rational public conversation. because I think that a proper rational conversation would lead these people to realize that what they are even doing is not in their best long-term interest. It might be in their short-term interest to buy a house in Dubai, a fancy car out there, but in the end, they're bigger losers.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that response, Prof. I think essentially the debate will continue, whether to go back to regions or to simply turn the state into region. You know, a lot of people have argued that Nigeria as it is now is too big for one person to manage from the center. Some people have advocated going back to the regions as they were. Some have said just turn the state and make them autonomous. Let there be resource control. What do you say to those kind of talks and suggestions?
You see, what makes this so-called resource control a difficult conversation is that the elite that have invested personal interest in the conversation have created these stereotypes of what you mean by it, that it prevents honest, serious conversation from being able to take place. Let me give you my example, which I think that if we can properly explain to the people in the North will be the ones shouting against this current order. In the 1960s, the third tier of government was just an administrative thing. It was not involved in a system of fiscal transfers. The parties to fiscal federalism were essentially the regional governments and the federal government. At the time, the North, by its own choice, chose to have a certain number of local governments, which were much fewer than in the South. In fact, there are probably twice as many local governments in the South as there were in the North. Just because the regions in the South chose to have more local governments for ease of their administration, it didn't matter anyhow. By 75, 76, the Commission on Local Government Administration had come up with some recommendations about bringing the third tier into the fiscal transfer systems. And as a result of that decision, local governments were now together get about 21% of the federal revenues in the distributable pool fund, the so-called PAC account. That's a significant part of the chunk. The powerful young colonels in the army, who were significantly from the North, all began to make their village a local government. By the time they were done, Nigeria had 774 local governments, and just less than 500 were now located in the North, which used to have about half of the number of local governments in the country. Now, what has happened with all the revenues flowing through that 21%, whatever, the North has become poorer than it used to be. When I grew up in the North in the early 60s, the quality of life was palpably better than it is today. There's a lot more poverty today in the North than there is today. So that leads me to what we like to call the lottery effect. I don't know how many of you know a poor man who has won the lottery. 10 years after he's won the lottery, he's poorer than he used to be. So what we now have is that a lot of local government chairmen across northern Nigeria that just come into their local government area, the day the money, the allocation money comes, they pay salaries, take the rest of it, and move back to the Hilton in Abuja. And so the effect has been an inoculation effect that has increased poverty in the North. So if people understood the conversations from such perspectives, they would not take the view of the big man from the north who is in Abuja, who sees a resource control conversation as, oh, they don't want us to get our share of this thing. Well, their share of this thing has only made life worse for most people. The few of the big men have accessed it in the rent in the system and bought themselves private jets and many cars. But the majority of the people in North are so much poorer. And that's what the challenge really has been.
Oh, all right, Prof. Thank you. I will take two more comments. I think I will take them at the same time. So you can take Donye Henry. I wanted to say Donye Diri. Are you? Donye Henry will unmute himself and make his comment. And then Charles Odion Iyore will also make his comment. So Prof can take the two together, and then we'll take Abdul Bello and Kokoye. If there's any other comments, please, you can type in the chat box or you can raise up your hand. Donye Henry.
Yes, thank you very much.
Unmute yourself.
Donye Henry, you do.
Okay.
Pat, hello, good afternoon. The last time we saw each other was 1983 at the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs.
Oh my goodness. Henry, you know it, you got you. One of the ones that left town.
Yes, you remember
about our group.
Yes,
back then. And I said, of all of us that came back from some of the finest universities in the world, in fact, only 2.5 of us were left in Nigeria.
Yes, you
Who is Isabakoba was one, me two, and February Bisala was the half.
Yes.
Half of him belongs to God now.
Yes. Well, it's lovely to see you.
It's great.
Yes, so the question I actually have is something that we really haven't talked about much in the past few years in the discourse, because just this morning, it took me no more than 7.5 minutes to do my census online for 2021. I mean, Census Day here in Britain is going to be on the 21st of March, but you can do it before then. It seems to me that this, having a proper census in Nigeria is something we seem to have just abandoned completely, because if you cannot, measure something, then how can you govern it? We're struggling towards participatory democracy and basic civil governance. How do we ensure that we can have something as fundamentally required as a census in order to drive infrastructure and nation building? Because I firmly believe that with a proper census, you'll find out that there aren't so many people in the North. And this is not the North-South divide issue, but we use census because it drives revenue allocation.
Well, thank you. I didn't quite hear you so well because of, the way the projection came in.
My question was about the census.
The sense is, and I agree with you, people tend to make this look like a North-South thing. It is not. The same problems afflict the South as the North, but they are manifested sort of differently. But the problems are fundamentally that of elite consciousness in nation building. You remember when you were around back in '83, part of what we tried to do back then, we were asking ourselves as a group of younger intellectuals, just returned to the country, how can we change the country, do what? With Femi and co leading the charge in one direction, we created Spectrum. It was a journal of public affairs that was supposed to bridge thought and action. We engaged people like Chief Philip Asiodu and the rest of them. And so how do you build a nation? Now that kind of consciousness that we showed then doesn't exist anymore now. You know, people are just trying to catch us can. In fact, there's a guy, I was giving a talk at Engineer Baribe's book launch in Abuja 3 days or so ago. And this guy came up to me after I finished speaking. And he says, you know, this thing about criticizing and not preferring solutions. I remember this guy, he went to school with me. The last time I saw him, he said exactly the same stupid words. I'm sorry, I'm using terrible language, but there are people who get you to a point of anger in this country. I looked at him and said, can you look at all the things that I've ever talked about and show me which I did not prefer solutions? Every time I talk, I'm so conscious of preferring solutions that I'm a very scattered guy in the sense that I not only prefer solutions, I actually struggle to implement many of them, even as a citizen, without the resources and state structure. But there are people who see themselves as just waiting for their chance to be part of the mess. And so anybody that doesn't say, look, status quo is okay, and goes along with these marginal, quote unquote, improvements, is complaining without giving solutions. And I find that very, very sad, because it creates a generation of people who don't try to do anything, but just wait for their turn to do more damage. But I remember back in our days, I mean, as Pebi and Co were driving Spectrum, and I remember, you know, one of those Spectrum face-offs, one-on-one on the issues that I did, and I was driving what we call then Congress of Concerned Citizens. You know, we were trying so hard to see how we could change. Most of you got frustrated and left the country. You know, I wrote a piece on you guys a few years ago in the Guardian that was titled "The Generation That Left Now."
I remember. Yes, I remember. Yes, I remember.
So the problem is a Nigerian problem, it's not a northern problem. And the sooner we recognize that, and the fact that it's only a little more accentuated in terms of the northern condition, the better for all of us.
Thank you very much, Prof. I think we've really spent a lot of time and we'll be wrapping up now, but I will take these three people together. They've had their hands up. Charles, you can unmute yourself and speak. Abdul, after that, you can speak, and then Kokoye after that, just briefly so that we can quickly wrap up and allow Prof to go and do some other things. Go on, Charles.
Thank you very much. On behalf of my generation, as always, I always like to thank Pat for continuing to do what he does. So Pat,
sorry, I'm not hearing.
I said, I'd like to thank you again for doing what you do and not giving up on it.
Charles, your bourgeois voice is not coming through.
It's not coming through. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
I'm stretching my ear.
Maybe you put on your headphones. Maybe you can put on
your you see?
Your voice is actually low. So maybe
I'm almost shouting here, but I'm in England. Maybe that's why.
Okay, in England.
Okay.
You see, that's the bourgeois.
Okay. All right. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, yes.
All right. Okay. So I said, before I even get started, I must thank you very much for continuing and staying with what you do. Even if they continue to insult you, your God knows you're doing a great job. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, and then I'll then go into the details. And we had this conversation for more than 30 years. You and I have it with 30 years. The first thing I like to talk about is the issue of politics. Politics is not just representation. It must also mean responsibility. And what I wrote to the National Security Advisor was that the local government councillors should be burdened to provide food for any child that is less than 6 years old. And that's not government money. You can get the churches, they can set up food banks, they can set up all of those things to feed those children. At the weekend, All of those who are up to 10 should learn a skill. That's for the local, for the councillors. Then the state government themselves, as members of the House, must fill in the gaps. You know, in America, what they call community colleges, teach those kids how to make interlocking bricks and things that you can put together. That's for the level of State House of Assembly. For the Federal House of Assembly, everybody in all of those 366 constituencies must champion a kibbutz, a farm where people can grow food and they can also sell those meals. And then finally, for the Senate, every senatorial district must have not just a nursing school, a school where we can train medical personnel. Then we can begin to know exactly where they are. It's not just representation, and then we're making noise about it. We need to be able to drive that one. The second one I was talking about, which is the issue of philosophy, is that we have our heads in the sand. In 1989, and I told you that the idea of anchoring our money on a liquidity anchor of foreign exchange would destroy the Naira. I said you get 1,000. You cannot get all your foreign exchange and determine the exchange rate that you will sell that Naira. What you have done, you're going to destroy the banking system, which what you have done, and we have been able to create a fiscal framework to support the economy. And that brought out a philosophy, which is still stupid. The feeling that we can own the central bank and own the economy and make all the money by all means, fair and foul, round-tripping, and that was fair. And the idiots elsewhere believe that because they can play around with numbers, they can stay in power forever. No one has won. Not the one who has economy, not the one who has power. And then you find the guys who come in between say they want to solve every problem by kinetic reactions, guns. We shoot someone and shut him down. You have not changed the sentiment. We need to get together and begin to realize that assumption of authority is not the same thing as a derived process. And until you derive the process, whatever you have done is not fit for purpose. Thank you very much, Pat. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Charles. Let me come at this from a different perspective, almost saying what you're saying. I think that there is a very, very important role for local government administration and for those close to the grassroots to play, even though the current structure that is an abuse structure is completely unacceptable to me. I believe that the development strategy that will get us out of the woods that we are in now will evolve basing on our factor endowments, latent comparative advantage, in which we use industrial policy that is select to particular endowments, not blanket industrial policy. For example, like Jeju Chang, the South Korean economist at Cambridge, would argue for in the book Bad Samaritans. But one similar to what Justin Lin, the Chinese economist, would argue, which is what I have argued for more than 30 years. Back when I worked for Volkswagen, I actually said, and Paul Collier came to interview me in 1987 or 8, because I was talking against the grain of general thinking at the time. And I said, if I had my chance, I would shut down this factory. And I would go and take some strong endowments Nigeria has in the motor value chain, like rubber. And I would massively invest in rubber production and take 2-3 components based on rubber in the motor car and produce for the global supply chain of the companies that were based in Nigeria. In my view, it will create millions of more jobs in Nigeria. You would earn even more foreign exchange from the value added exports that we were earning from crude oil. Our economy would have been completely transformed by now. Ironically, 25 or more years after, UNIDO asked Paul Collier to study China's industrialization and what Nigeria can learn, what Africa can learn from it. When Collier was finished, he basically said that the Chinese did what Pat Utomi asked Nigeria to do 25 years ago. In that regard, therefore, coming to the point you're trying to make, every part of Nigeria is well endowed in some things. My two favorite examples, take sesame seed in the Middle Belt, gum arabic in the far northwest. You empower people to grow sesame seed across the Middle Belt. And instead of just using it to eat soup, because they make soup from sesame seed, they begin to teach kids from primary 1 how to process sesame seed, different aspects of the value chain, all the way from primary 1 through secondary school. By the time you are in SS1 or 2, if you live around Boko or wherever, you can project how you can build a major business producing, adding value to sesame seed. And you treat local governments as economic development areas. And so the people who are the local government officials, these people you refer to who should go and run a kibbutz or whatever, their business will be to grow the things that will make that value chain globally competitive, or parts of it in the global value chain competitive. You will find that this poverty that is eating us up, that has made us the so-called poverty capital of the world and all of that, will disappear so fast. We'll be a middle-class country and all of that. This 2020 we're projecting, it's so much easier to go much further than that from this economy. If the political actors just understand these things and not see themselves as political but economic or political economy actors. This is the view that I have held for quite some time. I've tried to proselytize this point of view. In fact, there's a German Teichel, Volker Teichel, who was the chief economist at the World Bank in Nigeria many years ago. When he returned to Washington and was assigned to Justin Lin's office and saw what Justin Lin was writing, he said to him, look, there's a guy in Nigeria who says the same thing, you know? So I think that if we could somehow make the political process more responsible and responsive to the needs of the people, we will get that kind of value and we'll be a better society.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you, Charles, also. Harry, well, thank you all for your questions. We are really out of time. We've kept you all on this platform for longer than we usually do. I will just ask Abdul if you can take 30 seconds to make your comment or ask a question, and then I'll go to Kukui. Just 30 seconds each, and then we ask Prof to round up so that we all can go and get over, continue what else we are doing. Abdul, please, 30 seconds.
Okay, I'll try in 30 seconds. Anyway, so hello, Prof. Pat. Basically, I would like to really, an issue has been really bothering my mind about patriotic Nigerians in your generation trying to propose different solutions to solve the governance issue we have in Nigeria. But we all know that the problem is down to competence and a heart of service. So in as much as we propose 1 million solutions or whatever it is, if these guys are not competent enough or don't have the heart of service, right, those things will not be implemented and this problem would continue. And my other issue has been, for example, like you joined the APC, I was quite surprised you joining the APC and running for governance. I do believe this problem can be solved at a party level, right, starting at the grassroots. If we have influential patriotic Nigerians like you support politics and build political parties with working at the grassroots level, not going for the big shots, local government elections, right, House of Rep elections, so that Nigerians can have trust. Because another thing is Nigerians do not trust anyone. Even if new parties come up with credible people, the trust level is still really low, and we could tell from last election. So I do not see the rationale behind going for the big shots. I'm thinking, I've always bothered my mind why patriotic Nigerians have not taken that time, and we keep losing every 4-year slot to support the younger generations in working from the grassroots level, working at local government, House of Reps, right? Building political parties with proper democratic structure. And that is actually easy to win. 10,000 votes for local government, 40,000 votes. We have that number. And this would work around areas with influence, the areas with universities that have 50,000 students, 60,000 students, and they are ready for change. But if we do have those strong parties with compliance in place and proper democratic structure, we can build a proper democratic structure for the country from the grassroots level. And sorry, lastly, so if someone like you become a president, you have the corrupt Senate, corrupt House, it will be difficult for you to be able to instill those values from top to the bottom. But I think it would be better if people like you start supporting that movement and using technology, as you said, to mobilize people, right? Mobilize people from the grassroots level, start supporting, and then we can take the opportunity every 4-year slots to win local government, build the trust, and grow.
All right. Thank you for taking 30 seconds. That was the shortest 30 seconds I've seen.
That was slightly extended 30 seconds.
I'm sorry.
Prof, just a minute. Before you answer, Kukoye, just quickly, if you can take exactly 30 seconds, I'll be very happy, so that this will be the last, so that you can take.
Okay, I thought you were going to, yes, get the second question.
Yes, go ahead. Unmute yourself, yeah.
I think that you have not done enough.
You are very far. We can't hear you well.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, better.
Okay. I think that Prof has not done enough in the sense that he has not confronted the evils in the land of Nigeria, in our country, head on, face to face. You and I know the robbers and thieves out there. You know that every day, every second, they are plundering our economy second by second. Millions are being chunked out of every corner. Look, Prof, sir, with all due respect, it's time for us to begin name calling. All these things that we're hiding behind one finger, that will never hide us, will never get anywhere. No matter how much grammar we sit down here and talk for hours, those men who should hear us are not here hearing us. If people like you, Prof, sir, came out on the streets in Lekki and stood there, those armed robbers will not kill the youth in this country. They won't come and do us. We need people like you, Prof, to stand up everywhere. People like you, they are all over the country. They have been quiet for too long. A few days ago, you said you were at a book launch. If you were at that book launch, I said, look, you men are still in this country. You should all resign. Tell them to their faces. Are you scared of them? They will not kill you. We are behind people like you. You come up and watch how we move with you. We want movement in this country. And second thing I want to say again, that are you sure that we're ready for Nigeria's breakup? Because it says that in the 60s, when we're given independence, looking back now, we said that we're not ready. But is it not, we'll be asking for too much if we say we should break up now? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Very much.
That's the last question.
Prof.
Yes.
Yes, so me, I've dodged. It's over to you now.
Sorry?
I say it's over to you. Me, I dodged
over to me. Okay, yeah.
Comments.
No, starting from the last question, I think suggesting that I have not called names or spoken loud enough can only come from not having read me or some other reason. I've survived at least 2 formally documented assassination attempts. Court process is there. from the Abacha era. I've just written a book titled Why Not? It's about state capture, creeping fascism, and the criminal hijack of politics in Nigeria. I name names, everybody by name. Just in the last week, I wrote op-ed pieces in which I tracked the whole history of my engagement with General Obasanjo for over 30 years or more. And some people say, why take all this trouble? Nigeria is not worth it, and this. So when I hear that I have not done enough or said enough, I am sometimes wondering that if I do more, they will just declare me a madman. Why are you listening to him? He's a madman. And you don't want to look like a madman even before madmen, you know? So that's by way of that. There is need to be more strategic, as somebody commented here, and to develop a clear strategy for how to make this difference. It goes to the question of why did I, for example, join an APC? First of all, we founded the concerned professionals to challenge the military and the annulment of the election of June 12. We fought quite a battle. We were beaten on the streets of Lagos by policemen. Like I said, I survived some assassination attempts. When 1998 rolled up and the military decided it was time to run or come back in a different kind of form, we had a meeting of our group, and the question was, one of the members of the group, the now late Waziri Mohammed, was suggesting that we should transform into a political party and give Nigeria this leadership that we have been giving them snippets of in all our write-ups. There was quite a debate. There were those amongst us who thought we are professionals, we are not politicians. Let's go back to our business. We played our role as citizens. There were those like Donald Duke who thought we should go into politics. That meeting, I remember, took place in my office on Ituah. And when the meeting finished, by the way, Tola Buboluri, I think, led the group that said, let's go back to being professionals, running our businesses and all of that. For full disclosure, I supported Tola. And so we decided not to become politicians in 1998. Outside, Donald said to me, well, I don't know what you guys are doing, but we are going back to take over Cross River. And they succeeded. We tried to offer advice. I spent a lot of time in the company of President Obasanjo. I was candidate Obasanjo, trying to develop policy ideas of what to do. We fought a lot. In the end, he became president. And some of the stories are there for you to read. Some of it is in the book, Why Not?, which I just published. And some of it is coming in other writings. When a few years into the Obasanjo government, we saw that things were not going right. The now late Tunde Akinleye said to me, look, I think we were wrong. We ought to organize and engage. And the very least, we will define the terrain. So we decided to capture a party that some people had just registered called ADC. And the idea was precisely to go systematically and build up young people to go in, first at local government level, that this and this and this. But we found that the nature of state capture was so complete. Look, some friend of mine who was a political leader, sent his T-boy to the House of Assembly. Can you just imagine the contribution of his T-boy? All he has to do is call him and say to him, do this. He will say, thank you, sir. He will vote that. If you think that if you went in there, that you could really prevent them from, quote unquote, electing who they want elected, I think you're failing an understanding of the kind of system that is in place. So people accuse people like me of going to a small party. You're afraid to compete in the big ones. They so abuse me. I say, okay, let us help start a big one. The leadership newspaper, I don't remember what year now, 2009 or so. No. Anyway, whatever year it was, had this lecture. It's part of his annual lecture series in Abuja on political parties. I was the lecturer for that year. And I borrowed into the subject of political parties and what it should be and how it should function. At the edge of the podium was sitting Sam Mamuka, publisher of the Vanguard. I remember when I finished, Uncle Sam looked at me and said to me, Pat, you are deeper than I thought you were, I said, see me, see trouble. Unongo, Mr. Paul Unongo, ran from the back of the hall to come to me and said, I wish I can lock this door and prevent all of you from leaving this place until you start that party that can push out this PDP. Bola Tinubu was there, Akonde, Buhari, everybody was at that lecture. The nucleus of what became APC. And we worked tirelessly to try and develop a party that would be a really different, big party that could dislodge. All that time, I didn't know all the people I was working so hard with and for were looking for the way to get me out of the way as soon as possible. I can tell you 24 hours after the elections were won, I became a persona non grata in APC. For having done absolutely nothing for who I was, the signal was very clear. A few days after the elections were won, some people were supposed to go to Washington to a World Bank maybe annual meeting or something. From what happened, I knew immediately that they had it in them to get my ideas out of what would happen. Ituah Abubakar, who I'm quite friendly with, said to me shortly after the elections, what role do you want to play? And I said this also by way of responding to people who may have been offended by my anger at some of what is going on amongst Igbo politicians about this presidency thing. And I said to Ituah Abubakar, if there was one wish I would like to be the gateway into public life for the Igbo nation. I would like to determine the kinds of Igbos that will be taken seriously now going forward in Nigeria. Because I had been pained for a generation by the kind of mercantilist approach to public life that some of the better known players from the Southeast tended to represent. People forget that I was the closest confidant of Dr. Alex Ekwueme as Vice President of Nigeria. The reason that I was in a presidential advisory position at 27 was Dr. Alex Ekwueme, who was actually doing what we are saying we should do to young people, investing in me to be the next generation of leadership. So I felt a moral obligation to change the kind of evils entering public life. And that's what I said to Atiku in 2015. Of course, both Atiku and myself were suddenly of non-consequence in APC. So either way you go, you come small, they say you're coming small. Why are you coming small to build? In Nigeria, you can't do anything unless you are with the big. You go big, you experience. I'm not so smart to be able to tell everything. I know that I try my bit, but I take very much to heart the fact that we need to rebuild trust between the people and the people who claim to represent them. The trust deficit is now so low that we must invest most of our energies into acting in ways that will make the people believe that politicians actually really care about the people. And most of what I'm doing now is to find ways that we can do that. The whole business of the new Fabian Society of the concerned professionals that I have tried to recreate, the NC Front and all of those, a variety of ways that I've been trying to see what I can do. I do not deceive myself in believing that I have a magic wand to solve everything. But I want that whenever history is written, that it must be understood that I give more than 100% of me for the advance of the common good. I may have failed woefully, but at least I give it everything that I have. And that's all that I can hope for. But if what I have been able to do, and I'm still trying to do, to build character in a new generation, if that can only go so far, then I will be a fulfilled man. And one of the questioners, I think our moderator added character, but character is actually embedded in a sense of service. But I have quoted ad nauseum the motto of a secondary school in Owerri, government secondary school, Owerri: work hard, play hard. When wealth is lost, nothing is lost. And I've seen people go bankrupt and get rich again several times. Donald Trump is a classic example. When health is lost, something is lost. And this is why we must take more seriously healthcare, health policy in this country than we have been doing. Someone like Angus Deaton, the Princeton economist who won the 2015 Nobel Prize in Economics, his book, The Great Escape, Health, Wealth, and the Origins of Inequality, show that the way you separate countries that have been successful from those that have not succeeded so much is healthcare. And then, so when wealth is lost, nothing is lost. When health is lost, something is lost. But when character is lost, all is lost. The crisis of politics in Nigeria is the crisis of a collapse of culture. Character has been lost by most people active in public life in Nigeria. And I thank you for the privilege of sharing some time with you.
Thank you very much, Prof. I feel like clapping for that very round of speech, but thank you very much, Prof. That was well said. Pastor Ituah is back. I will hand over to him now to conclude the session. Thank you, everyone, for staying with us on the session. Pastor.
Sonny, thank you very much. And Prof, as usual, you have done a phenomenal and remarkable job, and your depth of knowledge, your depth of history, the strength of your contributions never fails to amaze me. I want to thank you very much. But really, I cannot let you go until we really granulate and have, if you like, final action points that we need to take as Nigerians 2023 is coming. We cannot just keep on looking. You have gone into politics, you've come out of politics, you're a professional, you've done this, you've done that. If you had all the resource, if you had all the support that you thought you needed, what would you think would be a step-by-step approach that we can all collectively buy into to make sure that in 2023, we change the narrative and do our best to get the leadership that we want? You may just speak high level here. We may meet personally to granulate, but I think just on a high level basis, is it even possible that if some of us came together, we may be able to effect a change in 2023? And what do we think? What do you think we should be thinking of doing? And you still did not finally answer the question, what would you do if you're president of Nigeria? You know, you've spoken about in the past, I don't know if anybody spoke to it, about you need to change political reform, you need to change electoral reform, you need to change this. But let me tell you, free of charge, the government that we have now will not do it. A lot of governments will also not do it because a lot of the people who are there, they are self-serving. It's not in their interest to change these things. So it will not get done. We can shout until we're blue in the face. Until we have the right kind of persons in the Aso Rock, the right kind of persons in the legislature, we'll all be wasting our time. We all know what to do. The issue is, how do we get the right kind of people in leadership in Nigeria? That is what I think we all need to just face and concentrate on as best as possible. I don't know if you want to take a bite at this.
Sure.
At your closing and parting shots, and then we'll let you go. Let me tell everybody on the platform that this time next week, we'll be back on this platform, 5 o'clock, with another great speaker. And then we're also going to be looking at ordinary people on the streets, the Alata, the Oniyo, the Taylor, the for organizer. We're also going to bring them on this platform and try and hear from them, their point of view, so that we can have a holistic decision and conversation about Nigeria. Pat, let me hear your closing shots and then we'll let you go. Thank you.
Well, thank you so very much. As part of those reflections, let me say, before I give some granular perspectives on specifics of what can be done, that many countries have relied on a spate of good fortune when they have prepared properly. They say, luck smiles on the prepared. You just don't get lucky. When you are preparing, luck can come. You heard my Cardoso story. It took that one leadership decision of one person. Nigeria has been very unfortunate in some ways. It was given to General Obasanjo to change this country's history for good. I think also that General Babangida had the talent to do it, but perhaps there was a challenge of values. But I think General Obasanjo had no reason not to have done it. And so, having missed our luck with those two, it is not impossible. You know, as World War II was coming towards these challenging moments for the Germans, and they had to withdraw from France, Hitler ordered the general that was in command of Paris to burn it down. General von Kulitz, who was that leader, or that commander, German commander in Paris, went and put on his full uniform, stood in front of the mirror, and said to himself, why should history remember me as the man who destroyed the most beautiful city in the world? He therefore sent a note to the Allied forces to please come in and just take Paris without any quick so that he would save Paris. Of course, they thought it was a trap. Eisenhower's army decided to ignore him, and he sent again, look, move in and take Paris quickly. And Hitler would keep calling him, is Paris burning? And Paris was not burning. At the point, Hitler realized that von Collitz was not going to burn Paris. So he sent out a division of SS Panzers to start heading towards Paris to go and destroy it. At that point in time, Charles de Gaulle, leading a ragtag French free forces, decided, look, we can't wait anymore. And he drove into Paris without any resistance and took over Paris and then told the Allied forces to come in. That many of those kinds of things in history, and I've prayed so often that one leader that we have called names will have a von Collitz moment and say, why should history remember me as the man who allowed Nigeria what could have been the greatest gift to the black man to go to waste? It hasn't happened yet, but it is not impossible. I throw that out as a caveat to begin to proceed. And also to say why it is important to try and influence these men who are in and around power. Because one cannot tell who will have the von Collitz moment. I'm saddened that Obasanjo didn't have it, and I keep reminding him of that. But it can come from anyone and through anyone. Now, then go into the basics of what we can do, not what somebody else should do. I believe that part of the problem we have as an organizing elite is that we've not engaged the grassroots enough. We are still too detached in our ivory towers to mobilize the power of ordinary people. We think they are stupid, but they are not stupid. And I use for my illustration an experience I had running in 2007. My friend was vice chancellor at the University of Ibadan. So I had asked Professor Bamiro to create opportunity for me to come and talk to students as part of my campaign in UI. Of course, he had to do it like he didn't know what was going on, but he helped facilitate that. I came, spoke to students. When I left UI, I went to Dugbe Market. As Pastor Ituah said, I'm an Ibadan boy. I used to come to school in Ibadan by rail and get off at the Dugbe station there, and then start heading to Agodi to go to Loyola College. So it was for me a moment of great nostalgia and all of that to go into Dugbe Market and talk to the women one by one. So we got into the stall of this mama, and I was telling her what we were there for, how if I became president, we would change Nigeria and all of that. She said to me, am I really serious that I'm running for president? I said, sure. She said, those running for local government have not come here. You running for president, you are here. Are you sure you know what you are doing? I was with Tony Uranta, incidentally. And after a couple of minutes of talking, the woman was so moved. She untied her wrapper, brought out this long, her treasury, which was in some rope pocket or whatever, and then brought out one 500 naira note and gave me and prayed for me and hoped that that 500 naira will help me win the presidency. Now, by the way, it's a significant day because later that evening, Tony Uranta had a stroke. anyhow, I got from that moment the fact that ordinary people are connected. They would like to see a different kind of politics in our country. I mean, they were the ones who bought their tickets for being members of the action group and contributed to the run of the action group. They still remember. But somehow, in the politics of post-99 Nigeria, we have assumed them away as people who just give some bread with 500 naira inside on election day. And if we can connect to those grassroots starting today and make a massive effort at educating them about why Nigeria is not working, why we have these problems, and getting them to reach out to their peers, people down there, you'll be amazed. Sunday Igbo, what's the chap, doesn't overnight become a leader because he rose on one occasion. He was part of them, he could talk to them, and they could feel him. Just like Gani Adams. I think that those of us speaking grammar on this platform must have a way of talking to the Gani Adamses of this world, must have a way of talking to the Sunday Gurus of this world, even to the Nnamdi Kanus of this world, to get them to think more clearly and to find systematic ways of mobilizing the people to act in their own interest to advance the common good of all. So I think that's one thing first. I think that we need to use technology to engage young people, not just because of their numbers, which is important, but because you see, passion belongs to the young. I lived in the US at a time when the American economy was going through very difficult times. Jimmy Carter was president. Inflation was at 29%. Japanese companies were overtaking American companies left, right, and center. And he lost that election of 1980 to Ronald Reagan, who inspired the spirit of America. And these young kids who, when I was on campus, would typically around April, March, be working on their CVs to go for interviews for jobs that may not be there. When I came back a few years later on sabbatical, we're working on their business plans. Many of them expecting to become billionaires before their 26th birthday. And they created a new economy, the dot-com revolution, and America was back. I think we need to charge up our young with a sense that throughout history, it is the young that have changed the world. And it's natural because when you are my age, well, I'm almost getting past the age, you are so worried about school fees that you don't want to rock any boat. But when you are 21, you have no school fees to pay. Your world is a world of ideals. As we say, if at 18 you're not a communist or a Marxist or a socialist, something is wrong with your heart. If by 40 you are still one of those things, something is wrong with your head. So we need to get the young to recognize that the future belongs to them and that they have it in them to redeem their country. If they get passionate enough and put their energy to organizing rather than to abusing each other on Twitter, that we could find a solution. And we could then mentor them in the direction of this organizing. Look, even in today's world, Kanu, for several election cycles, had one-term governors because the consciousness of the youth of Kanu was such that they protected the vote. When INEC materials were landing, they followed the materials to the central bank, stayed around central bank, did not go anywhere, until he got to the polling booth and so on and so forth. One permanent secretary who disagreed with one governor and was demoted and sent back down to be school principal where he was before he became PAMSEC, decided to challenge that governor. He had no money, nothing, but the youth of Kano organized enough that he won the elections. Ibrahim Shekarau became governor of Kano. It is absolutely possible if we show honesty of purpose and conscientiousness. Not what is coming to us, but what our country can be. To be able to mobilize these young people, educate them in a way that will make them bring this change to pass. And then perhaps we can build political parties or a political party that is a real political party. Transparent, has structures that finds the best, starting from the universities, recruits good people and train them in, make values the first thing. Put up what the party stands for, its values. If you don't meet these criteria, you don't aspire to them, don't bother to join. You will begin to affect a generation in a way that will change Nigeria for good. I think that's a little long-winded, but that, in my view, is a summation of a path away from serfdom.
Thank you very much, Pat. I think you've given some very, very clear directions. And I think that you and I need to sit down and granulate this and also see how we can raise money to at least begin this thing. The journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. So this is a direct appeal by me to everyone on this platform to see how we can raise some money and start this sort of movement. The least we can do is to try and start. And we will be having how to have a bank account or something that anybody can put little drops of water in and see what we can do. All I know is that our generation cannot continue like this, and we cannot sit back and fold our hands and watch our patrimony and our nation being stolen and taken away by people who really do not care. Nigeria is a country of great potential, great possibilities, and all we need is a few right-thinking people who are committed to the Nigerian dream to just unleash this thing. There's no part of Nigeria that's not viable in one way or the other, and there's no part of Nigeria that cannot become great. We just need people who think great. Pat, my patoto, thank you very, very much. I want to assure you that we will bring you back as soon as we can, so that we can granulate further a few more ideas and also drink from your depth of knowledge and research. Who knows? Maybe we'll have that moment in France, in Nigeria very soon. But we're not going to wait for that moment. We're going to try and create our own moment and see what God will do with us. Thank you very much, everyone, for being on the platform today. We've taken much longer than we usually do, and the reason is obvious. We had somebody who had a lot of information to really give out. Thank you for the time. Greet your lovely wife for me. She's ever looking 16. And just make sure she keeps looking that way.
That's what poverty does, you know. When you don't have enough money to feed properly, you look younger.
I disagree with you. Maybe you don't have enough money, but my sister has more than enough. So you're on your own part. But God has been gracious to all of us, and God has provided. Indeed. So thank you very much. God bless you. Everyone, see you same time next week, 5 o'clock. We'll be on the platform, and God will be there with us. And I know that Nigeria will be great again. I pray for Nigeria. Nigeria will do great things. Nigeria will be mighty. Nigeria will not fail. You will not fail. You will not fall. We will see a great Nigeria. And God will transform this nation in the mighty name of Jesus Christ. Nigeria, you are transformed and you are healed and restored in Jesus' name. God bless you all. Have a very wonderful weekend, and the Lord be with you. Sonny, thank you very much. Thank you. You did an awesome job. All right. Good night, everybody. Take
Thank
good
you. Good night.
Bye.
Good night. God bless.
Good night.
Good night. God bless.
Brother, good night.
Good night. Good everyone. Take
My
care.
brother
Stay
Doctor, I
safe.
see you with a Christmas beard. Dr. Yanko.
Oh, yes,
Stay
sir.
safe.
Black Father Christmas. How's my sister? I hope you are looking after her.
She's fine. She's
Hey,
fine. Thank God.
Bambo, good to see you. Sonny, God bless you.
Thank you very
Thank you
much,
so
Pastor.
much. God bless you. Thank you. All right. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Pastor.
Bye.
Bambo, see you.
Okay then.
Pastor.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
care.
Auntie
Take
Prof,
care.
how are you? Uncle
Take care.
Minko,
Very good. Always good. Always good to be here.
Eshe,
Always
thank
good
you
to be
so
here.
much. Thank you.
Take care. God bless.
All right. Kokai, take care. Bye.
Bye. Yeah.
Pastor. Hi.
Folabi, God bless you. God be with you.
God be with you, Pastor. Thank you very much. I'll send you a message later.
Prof. Paku, see you. Auntie Ronke, God bless you. Ivy Muiwa, you stayed the course. God bless you. Good to talk to you earlier.
Thank you, sir.
Thomas, good to see you. Bionyari, God bless you. Tola Uni, God bless you. Abayomi Akinjide, God bless you. I need you on the platform. So try and make yourself available. Ayorinde Fisher, God bless you. God bless you all. Thank you.